it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Yeah. And boom. What's up? Welcome back, goddammit, to another edition of Tell Me a Joke, the guideline of chasing the dream. I'm your host of Maniacal, Menace, Kyle Smith. Say the whole thing like a pimp named Slickback. And today, we got the punk rocker turned poet. He's still both, but man, put y'all motherfucking hands together for Carlos Salazar. Hey, there it is. What's up, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. How you been?
Good. I've been good.
That's what's up. Like, all right, this is great because like usually at Avant-Garde you see so many types of talents that come through. Usually, mainly it's just poetry. But your poetry stands out because you speak volumes when you step on stage. Like, what got you into the poetry?
Well, first of all, thanks for that compliment.
Yes,
I
sir.
think honestly, if I had to really answer that, I think I've always been. I've always felt the need to express myself through writing, right? So I think before I even knew that it was called poetry, right? I mean, that's just something I've always felt inside me.
Yeah.
As far as performing poetry, it's one of those things where, I was in a band for so long, and I'm kind of in one now. It's the same band, but I did the music scene for so long, and I would see, little pieces of things like that other artists were doing that I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, I never thought about performing solo. I was always a part of a much bigger group, a much larger ensemble of artists,
Right.
that were doing something together. So I think a couple years in doing the band, I tried, some poetry, but, on my own. And I discovered it's just a whole, this is a whole different medium, right? When you're up there by yourself, than when you're up there with your best friends and you're doing stuff together. So the long end of it is I have always wanted to express myself through writing, and the band went dormant for a long time, and I still had all these words that I would normally turn into lyrics and things like that. So I think that's really when I decided to really follow that avenue of performing.
How is band life?
Well, I can only tell you my experience of it. My experience of it has been, it's been surreal. I'm 38 now, and I mean, I started this band, 19 years ago.
Ooh, you in there deep.
Yeah, and we were really active full time for about 6-7 years of it, right? Where we toured the country. We got signed to a couple different labels. We put out EPs. We put out a record on a label out of Chicago called Victory. And we were doing that full time. So during that span is really when I consider, like what band life is, right? So we were touring nonstop. We'd come home for a couple of weeks, and then we'd head back out on the road. Now as an adult, we've really, 2023 was really the year that we kind of brought that back, as we started doing some reunion shows, and then people would ask us to do more shows, and it's been really wonderful because you start something so long ago, and then you fade away for a few years, and you think maybe no one's going to care.
No one,
and it's been really awesome. And I think COVID had a lot to do with that, where people were without live performance, live music for a long time, and then all of a sudden we could all do it again, and it's like, I think that made us miss it even more.
Definitely.
So I think that's what helped bring us back. And so now as an adult, band life is a lot more fun because now
hell yeah.
It's I'm not on the road 24/7 trying to make a name for ourselves. We're really just going to play in places that we've had a lot of friends and that we've made memories, and we're just kind of trying to live in that nostalgia bit for a while.
Man, damn near 20 years of just the come on, that's dope, yo.
So we like I said, we weren't active this whole time. We were active till about 2012 is when we did like a farewell tour, and then some guys went off to get married, went off to graduate college. And then get like real jobs, and we stayed friends for we were still friends, but what I'm saying is we stayed in touch for a few years, and then and then every couple of years we would kind of do a reunion show for something special. Like in 2014 we did a show in Houston for Tots for Tots, Toys for Tots.
Toys for Tots,
yeah.
nice.
And then we kind of did something again in 2016 where we went and played a show in Mississippi for a friend's venue that he was running, and then from 2016 we kind of stayed dormant until about 2020. We actually played 2 shows in 2020 right before COVID hit.
Ooh.
And then no one can do anything.
Yeah.
And so it was during that time that we were like, hey, wasn't that a lot of fun? Like maybe we could do that again if the world ever goes back to
going again. Let me get back on that track again. Like so, so you're signed now.
No. So right now we're just independent artists.
All right. So when y'all did get signed, how did that come about? Like, how do you go about getting signed? Just keep playing and somebody normally hears you, or do you actually look that out? You got to search for somebody. You need a manager or something.
So it can happen in any number of ways, right? There are people who have been discovered. There are people who had their managers do it. There are people who just sought it out. For us, it was a combination of things. So like I said, we are a band called Before There Was Rosalyn from here in Houston, Texas, and
before there was Rosalind.
Rosalind.
Yes. Oh, that's my
Yes.
sister's name.
Oh,
Okay.
well, tell her we said hello. So back in 2008, 2009, when we were kind of at the height of when we were doing this full time without a label, we signed to an indie label out of Tennessee called Holdfast Records. Now that was because we were playing shows and touring with bands that were on the label, and so that's how we got the attention of the label. It was run by this guy Dave Darr. He was such a great dude. We met him a few times. He seemed really into what we were doing. We liked him as a person, and so he put out this record that we did called As Far as the Moon from the Sun. We put that out on his label, and it was during this time that we were actually getting a manager that used to book shows here in town for a venue called Java Jazz at the time, right? And so our manager was basically like, I want to help you guys get to the next level, right? And so for us, we're a bunch of kids. We don't really know what that means. We just keep playing shows, we keep writing music.
You just want to play.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. But he basically set up, in the middle of like the summer tour that we're doing, he set up a showcase with a label that he had a lot of rapport with. He had sent, over the years, I think he told us he sent like 15 artists to do a showcase for this label, and they'd signed like, I think 5. We were like the 6th band that did eventually get signed. So how that worked is we're in Chicago, and we were booked at a private like studio. And so we go to the studio and we're told, okay, you're going to play 3 songs that you think people would want to hear, and then we're going to let you know if we're interested, right? And so that's what we did. So we played a private show for the owner of Victory Records and a few of his staff. And that was a really interesting story because we were told by our manager, don't expect them to say anything after you play. Like, they're usually just kind of like, nod and walk away, and then they'll let us know whether they're interested. And for us, it was actually a really cool experience because we played 3 songs like we would if we were playing in front of a crowd, right? We just did what we did. And immediately when we were done, the owner of Victory just walks up the little ramp on the side of the stage, and he just tells us right then and there, he's like, I'm gonna make you guys an offer. I'm gonna sign you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really surreal for us because we were like, what?
Make you an offer you can't refuse, huh?
Yeah. And so so we did that, and we ended up only putting out 1 record on the label. By that time that we put out that record, we'd been a band for so long. Like I said, some of the guys were already kind of ready to move on to the next phase of their lives. Like, a couple of them were engaged or were about to get engaged, and then a couple wanted to like finish school, and so that's why we put out that record in 2009, and then we toured on it for a couple of years or a year and a half, and then when we were working on the second record, that's when guys were like, hey, we don't know that we can continue doing this full time, and so that's what we did, that farewell tour in 2012, and then everybody kind of went on with their lives, and then like I said, we started kind of just joking about playing again in 2014, and then we found, I always said, like, if we do it, like, I want it to be more than just we're just going to get together and play. Like, let's do it for like something special, right? And so we kept getting these opportunities to do that. And even 2023, it was the same way. Like, we didn't just say, hey, like, let's play shows. We were like, hey, let's write some music, and then these really awesome opportunities presented themselves. We were able to play with bands that we had really loved in our genre when we were growing up, and playing festivals that we were just like, what? They're going to let us play? And so that's what this year's been about. And we actually have plans to do more stuff.
Are you the sole writer of the group?
No, I write usually all the lyrics. But I don't have actually any musical talent, so it's all my dudes. That's all I bring to the band is just the words and the acrobatics on stage.
All right, so do they normally play a melody and you just kind of like pinned down to it, or do you write some lyrics first and then they kind of play a melody around it? Like how does that work?
So usually, right? So for us, it's a bit of both, right? Like I'll every now and then I'll bring a lyric that I'm like, I want this to be in a breakdown. I want this to be in a singing spot, right? But for most of it, I'm always writing constantly. That's what I'm saying. So I'll write something. I don't know if that's just going to be a poem or if it's going to be lyrics to a song. Right? So I'm constantly writing. But what will happen is all the guys, as they're writing, they'll send me the stuff. We're all in group chat, so I'll be listening to the music as they're writing it, and I can have my input on that part of it. Like, I love this. Maybe I don't like this that much. Like, let's try this. But it's all them writing it, right? And then when the song is fully formed, that's when I go in the studio and we'll do, scratch tracks. We'll do like a demo version of that song. And then once we all can hear it the way that it would sound with vocals and everything, then we all kind of have a say as to like, yo, like we love this, let's try this.
Yeah.
Right? So it's basically, I'm involved every step of the way, but it's all them writing it. You know? Yeah.
Because they play the instruments.
Yeah. So as far as the instruments, it's all them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you do get into it, like how, because you're a poet as well, does your poetry also, well, you said your poetry also it goes both ways. So what category would you put yourself in besides punk? Like who would you say you would what band would you say you would kind of portray yourself behind? Like a Red Hot Chili Peppers or a Rage Against the Machine? Because the lyrics that you have, the things that you speak about on stage, do you also, is it that type of field when you doing your songs?
That's a great question. No, I would say it's definitely two different outlets, right? So we started out when we started out as a band, right? We knew we wanted to have a really positive message, right? So we're like, so as far as like what, we did this genre, and it's just like, it's called Christian metalcore, right? It's just like heavy riffs, heavy breakdowns, but it all came with like a positive message, right?
Yeah.
And not that my poetry isn't positive, but I feel like that's a different sort of outlet where you've heard it. I'll do like love poems. I'll do poems about growing up in Honduras. I do poetry about my mom. So the poetry is so personal to me as an individual, as the way that I grew up, whereas in my lyrics tend to be a bit broader. They're more about how I see the world and what my beliefs are. So I would say that I'm not saying that those things never interject, because obviously I'm still the same person. Yeah. But I think that when it comes to doing poetry, I allow myself to be vulnerable in a very different way than I would when we're doing the music and we're doing the band together. Because I try to make sure that whatever I'm doing, that I'm being honest about what I'm writing. You know?
Yeah, you seem like that type of person that's like, nah, ain't no fakery over here.
I appreciate
We definitely gonna keep this legit, 100. Yeah. So did you always see yourself as being a person, a part of a band, or when you was getting older, did you know that your life was gonna take this route?
No, I mean, it's getting older. So here's the thing, because the band was such an integral part of my early 20s, so I've been in it for so long now that I couldn't see my life going any other way, right? But before that, no, it was a lot of, I like music just like anybody else. I like going to shows. I like being a part of that community. But for me, it really, it was something I felt called to do, felt led to do. Like I remember being around these amazing bands that were doing these amazing things, and it was something that I prayed about. I remember like seeing a show by this band called the Pilots. They're from Houston at Scout Bar years ago, right? And they were like an indie band, by the way. They didn't sound anything the way that we do, but they were a great band. And the guy gets up there and he just talks about his faith, talks about Jesus, talks about just all this positivity, right? And I was like, what, people can do that? Like I'd never seen that before, And literally I went and I prayed about it. I was like, God, if you've got something else for me, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I don't want to not have this because I never had the courage to ask for it, right? Yeah. And so 3 days later, I get a phone call about this ad. Back then you'd put out these ads on HoustonBands.net about just looking for musicians, right? Yeah. That you could connect with. And so I'm on the phone for 30 minutes with this guy, Shane, who's he was the original guitar player of the band. And we just really, really connect on like I said, we want to do something positive. We want to we want to play heavy music, but we want it to have like a really good message too, right? And that was December of 2004, right? And then in March of 05, we're playing our first shows. And then I've been doing that in one way or another
from high school.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, we're the same age. So
I just graduated. It was the winter after I graduated high school that I started the band, or really joined what would become the band.
So did you have any plans before the band? Did you just like, I'm going to go into construction after I get out of high school?
No, it's funny. I think the only thing I really ever wanted to do, well, like I was going to major in like English literature, right? But then I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with that. Like I knew that I wanted to be a writer in one way or another, right? But no, I didn't. It wasn't like there wasn't something else that I really, really wanted to do. You know, I just graduated high school. I was basically going through the motions of getting the basics done, and then I was going to pick a major, which I was like, I think I'm going to major in English Lit. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And then I just, I was in a band for the next like decade. You know? And at first, my mom was not very happy about that.
Yeah, I bet.
But she came around. You know, my mom bought us our very first van that we toured in because we'd done it for a few years. She saw how serious we were about it, and she supported it.
Astro with no windows, Astro van with no windows. What type?
No, it was like
it
was one of the
caravan.
No, it was
sliding doors.
It was the one with the captain chairs, you know, two in the front, two in the back, and then the bed. Yeah, I don't remember. It wasn't a 15 passenger. We didn't get one of those till way later. But yeah, their support. I mean, my brothers ended up being in one of the music videos that we shot.
Yeah.
So you know, my parents eventually came around to the fact that I was going to keep doing that.
Growing older, because I never knew. I just thought that like when it was ever punk or rock or heavy metal, that it was just always like in my head growing up. Like I'm always like, oh, this is something satanic, or you know, it's never can be anything positive. Until I got older and I started listening to certain things. But I remember growing up in the cul-de-sac that I stayed in, there was this kid that moved in. He had just moved in, and his dad was in the military, so he's always moving around and everything. And they were a very, very Christian family. And this is the first time that I've actually heard somebody mention like he was into Christian heavy metal, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Dude, I need to know
like
what
it
it sounds like."
right?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah,
and it sounds exactly like heavy metal, but a very, very, very positive message behind it.
Right.
And I was like, "This is." I guess there's a need for everything, you know, because Lecrae is he's a Christian rapper.
Yeah, I know Lecrae.
Right.
Yeah.
So like my dad is very into Lecrae just because he's like, you know, I like rap, but also I found Jesus, and so it's now like he wants to stick with the rap, but he also wants to stick with something positive. And Lecrae came out. He's like, "You heard of Lecrae?" I was like, "Nah, man, I don't know who that is." And then he let me listen to him. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I get this. So like, if certain things on Pandora or Spotify will play and they have a very, very positive message, people like that will pop up, like D1, Tobe Nwigwe. He also pops up because he has a more of a spiritual message behind his lyrics. And that there, I'm like, oh, so it doesn't necessarily have to be what I always thought it was. You know, you know, everybody has their own little lane, just like what I do with the comedy poetry. Like, since I can't go since it's just so much for me to go do poetry, to go do comedy, where I want to do comedy and feel good about it, this is where the comedy poetry comes in, to where this is why you see me on stage being different from everybody else, because it's just like I have an outlet, but it's not an outlet that's easily accessible to me.
Right, I understand.
So this is the outlet that makes me feel good, makes me feel accomplished about things, and I still get like, you know, booked for shows, but things have kind of slowed down a bit compared to how I used to be. Now I got a kid and, you know, a wife. I mean, I got a wife and a kid on the way, so it's just like I'm not really sure. You know, I hope people are still going to be there, and like you kind of gave me like positive note about that. Yeah, even though, you know, people got older and we wanted to go ahead and build a family and such. When y'all came back, people were still there for y'all. How did that feel when you understood that like things were kind of slowing down, or when y'all were actually about to disband or whatnot?
So I remember feeling a mixture of things. So I always, because I felt like the whole time I was in that band, I felt like I was honestly fulfilling a purpose. You know, that I was like, I always felt like when I would talk to God about it, I was like, you're gonna have to, when you're ready for me to like lay this down, you're gonna have to take it from me, because I'm never gonna just be like, all right, I'm done with it, you know? Right. And I think it was when my best friend, who was a guitarist, and he still plays guitar for us now, whenever he told me, hey, you know, I really think it's time for me to step away. Like, there's things I want to do, and you know, I love you, and we're best friends, but I don't think that I can continue. That was really the first time that I really felt at peace about it, because it was something, it was like I was being told, like, you know, you can continue this, but it just felt like it was okay for me to let it go. And I think it's because he and I had built such a great rapport together, that any other member prior to that, we'd always been like, hey, we wish you the best. You know, we'll find someone else to fill in. And then we met these other great people who would then go on tour with us. But I felt like for me, that was the time that I was like, I actually felt like, okay, it's time for us to move on. Right. And so there was that, sadness of like, you're obviously stepping out of something that you've known for so long, right? And now you're going to go and
going back into that uncomfortable feeling again.
Do something new. Yeah, man. And honestly, I was very blessed, because like when I was in that band, you know, I would do, when we were home, I would do like whatever jobs I could, right? Because you know, you're so busy with the band. But at the end of that, I started. I had worked briefly with a company in 2006, right before the band did anything serious, and I was like, oh, and it was in sales, right, and like in the renewable energy industry, right, and so when 2011 comes in and we're like, oh, like, you know, we're about to be ready to call it quits, I'm like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna see if they still need people, and I was like, and if I get hired back, like, I'll do that till I find something else that I love. And I've been working for that company for 13 years now. Like, I'm still there, and so I was very blessed to be able to make that transition almost immediately.
Immediate,
like the band ended. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like, I gotta like grow up and like do something else, right? And then I started this job.
Big boy pants on.
Yeah, and I started this job, and I just loved it. You know, it took me, you know, like anything else, you have your first couple of days and maybe first couple of weeks that you feel kind of weird about doing something new. And then, but yeah, I was and like I said, it's a renewable energy industry, so like I loved it. And I've grown with the company, and I've been there. So for me, you know, there were those moments of like, oh, it's a sad that it's ending. But like I said, because we stayed friends, and we would still talk about the possibility of doing something in the future, and we have done it. I have no regrets about that. Like my best friend went on, and he graduated college. He's married, you know, has a baby. And so obviously I know he doesn't, like I said, I don't think any of us regret ending it when we did, because I think what we were all really saying was this isn't something we want to like necessarily like give up forever, but we understood that like the time for us to pursue this career in music was kind of like, that time was coming to an end, you know, because, you know, if you're pursuing anything as a career, it has to take up all your time. You know, and the thing is, you know, the same way that I've always felt like I'm a writer, they've always been musicians. They didn't stop being musicians. They were just like, hey, we just can't tour full time. Yeah. You know, and that's such a funny sort of circle moment talking to you about it in 2023, because we have played more shows this year than we have in the past 6.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're already working on shows for next year, and so we all kind of laugh about that. Just the full circle moments of, we've been very blessed with being able to share the stage with bands that, like I said, we were like, oh my God, we love this band when we were growing up, and like we've been able to like, you know, play same stages with them in 2023, and so. So we look at all of it as just like, this has just been such a crazy, wild ride.
That is why it felt like I gave off some type of pheromone that I didn't even tell many people that. I mean, things were kind of under wraps when the baby was coming, but when the baby is still, because it's still not here yet. But like my wife, she was like, "Hey, you need to slow down a bit, you know, because we got to do things around here. We can't have you all." I'm like, "All right, cool." So you know, I stopped going to open mics and all that, but like that didn't stop the people from booking me to do things, and I'm like, where were y'all when I wanted this to happen?
When you were trying to make it, right?
I was like, yo, like, even though the bookings they pay this and they pay that, they ain't enough to go ahead and feed a family or nothing like that, but it's still notoriety to get my face out in different markets and different places, to where it's just like, oh, Well, I'm glad these talents are being seen by people, but you know, I'm kind of wishing that they were seen a few years ago. But I don't think I was ready back then. Like, now I have like a caliber of things. Like I have a litany of just a Rolodex that I can roll through, and I'll be like, oh, I can actually give a good show, not just something mediocre. Like I've done shows before. I put together my own show, The Inquisitive Observations, comedy poetry. But like I've never done anything with it, and when I go back to look at it, I'm like, oh, I definitely wasn't ready for that. Like I definitely wasn't ready to talk to people for like an hour and a half about comedy and poetry. But I was capable of doing it. But now if I do it now, I would do it so much better. And the memory is there, and like the jokes and the bits are worked out to where, oh, this is polished to where it would easily just slide in to the poetry. Back then, like I had it, but I had the idea of it, but it was like a rough draft. Yeah. So, you know, I didn't have the means to be able to get it funded the way I wanted to. Like I got it shot for free by a friend of a friend. And, you know, so they came in, they was able to do that for me. I was able to get a stage and all that because, you know, that's the city that I was in. Basically, we always do open mics and stuff there. So, boom, I was able to get the stage. Still had to pay for that. But, you know, I had my homie. He was my producer. And he was like, hey, man, we just gonna get it. And I'm like, you know, had some people go ahead and open for me and everything. It was way too long. The show was way too long. It was like 2 hours and something. And, you know, my uncle was like, hey, yo, next time, I'm going to just tell me when you going. And that, you know, because you was up there for a long time. And I was like, I get it. All right. So I know the things that I would do better next time. There's, you know, cut the fat out of it. Yeah. You know, it was a good, nice prime rib, but there's a little fat around the sides that I didn't need in there that I just kept giving because I felt that I needed to because this is my only option. This is my only chance at the time. And now it's like, I wish I had that knowledge then, but, you know, back then growing up in New Orleans, we just trying to make it somehow.
Yeah.
You know?
But, you know, two things to your point that I thought while you were talking about that. Number one, I think there's a season for everything. Yes. You know what I mean? So I understand that idea of like, I wish that this was different then, right? But the second thing to that is like, but that's how we learn, right? Because I mean, there's been so many shows that we've been a part of that were like, oh my God, we would do this differently next time. Yeah. You know, or even recording in the studio. You know, we've been like, oh, we would do this so much different next time. You know, but you don't know what you don't know until you go through it, right? And so we're still doing that, and part of the being there with the community at Avant-Garde and Right About Now poetry and watching, you know, poets like you and so many others that are there, it's like watching everybody's performance and really paying attention to the nuances of the way that people do things. I feel for me has helped me greatly in just feeling, if nothing else, feeling more confident about my own particular style of delivery, because I would watch other poets and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm never going to be that good, right? And then I stopped doing that because then I realized my favorite thing about all the poets that are up here is they're so different from each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? And everybody's awesome. And so then I was like, you know what? Like I just have to tap into what makes me me. Yeah. You know? And doing that, you know, by myself up there I feel like made me less anxious when I have to do it with a band behind me. Because I'll tell you something else. 20 years in almost, and I get nervous before every set.
I was just going to ask you that.
Every single set. Every single set. And whether I'm up there by myself in poetry or whether I'm up there with the band, the 5 minutes before we go on are the most anxious moments of my life. But then as soon as the music kicks in, you know, it goes away. Yeah. You know, and then for those 30 minutes or whatever that we play, like I don't feel that anymore. You know, and it's sort of the same way when you're in a poem, it's a little bit different because you kind of get into it, you know, and then you're like, oh, for me, it's like, I hope I don't forget the words, right?
Yes.
When I'm up there.
Yes, all the time.
All the time, right? And then you realize people don't know your poetry that well. Yep. And even if they do, they're not going to care if you miss a line or two, right?
They ain't even gonna know because they don't know what you wrote.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things of watching other people do their thing. Has made me feel like, okay, everybody's a person and everybody's got their own story to tell, you know. And I think if I had anything to take away from, like I said, immersing myself in the Right About Now community, it's made me feel less anxious and less alone about the way that I do things, because I think everybody goes up there thinking, am I going to be awesome or am I going to suck? And then it's like, well, that doesn't matter. It's like, is what you're saying going to resonate with somebody else?
The community there is so loving.
Yes.
It doesn't. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I'm going to go full force into this poetry side of things, because this comedy side, they don't care at all. There's no love in that audience.
Oh, that's kind of tough.
Yeah. It is difficult to come and like just to transition. Like this comedy poetry, it works on both lanes now. Like before, it did not. Before, it was just like, what is happening?
Right.
He just up here hippity hopping, giving us these words, and I'm like, oh, all right. So I was able to, like, because I've been doing it for some time, I was able to take that and to mesh it into the comedy side, to where that now when I go do comedy, like they're gonna get comedy poetry, because it's something that no one's really seen before.
Right.
Like, you might have your Andrew Dice Clays that might come in and do a little rhyme here or rhyme there, but like I have whole poems of just silliness, to where it's
I've heard it and I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And to where it's not as it's pretty intricate of what I'm doing, because it takes me time to actually sit down and write
absolutely.
these. And so, like, I definitely wanted to stand out, because I've never known. I've always wanted to create my own lane, because for me, it's very difficult to stand out in a world of people trying to do the same thing. And I never had my own little. I have my own little style, but every time people see me, especially when it comes to comedy or something like that, it's oh, you're another short man. And you see the Cat Williams or Kevin Hart, and it's like, oh, well, they're not doing this. So, right. I'm definitely going ahead and, putting the blink on and be like, look at this lane that I'm in right here.
Yeah.
Check this out, just so you don't automatically put me in that category because of my hair is long or because I am small, which I get that often. And I don't mind it, because they are some of the greats to me.
Right.
But it's just like, now, you say this because I do comedy and I'm small, right? This is not because I sound like them.
Right.
So in the beginning, my cadence, it was never like Kevin Hart, but I could get into a pitch to where I would sound kind of like Cat Williams, I would assume, but eventually I was like, I don't want that to be me. Like I found my own voice, so whenever it does come on stage, I know the influx of my voice from high to low, to be able to be my own person on stage is who I am.
Yeah.
And I've taken advice from people to where, most of the time I do talk really too fast. I talk way too fast, and sometimes people can't hear me or understand what I'm saying. I used to tell people, whatever, this is just me. This is how I talk. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. If I do take that and then I slow that down a bit, maybe my bits won't be like 1 minute, 2 minutes. Maybe they'll last maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Right.
So that's something that I've taken away from that. And I've also been able to take that knowledge from comedy and bring it over to the poetry side, just for, like, since my poems do have punchlines, there is time for me to stop and wait for the laughter to die.
Right.
I in the beginning, I would just run through it, whatever. I don't care how you felt about that line right there. Just let me get this over with, because I'm nervous.
Right, right. Exactly.
I don't know how you're gonna feel about me delivering this silliness to you. So, but now it's just like I've been learning to embrace the silence more, and also embrace the pauses. That was a very difficult thing for me to take, because I'm always fast paced, and I never want to lull. I never want anything to kind of like, oh, what are we waiting for next? Now it's just like, give it to me.
Embrace the silence. That's a great line, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a great attitude too. Yeah.
I want to feel it.
Yeah.
I want to feel what's happening right now. And most of the time, especially if I can command the crowd, if I'm the true MC that I am, like moving the crowd, this should be like it, not a cakewalk, but this should be what comes with the territory.
Right.
Yeah. Like, what was it like for you in front of your first crowd?
Oh my gosh, I was so nervous, dude. Like, and that's, and we in the beginning, we played a lot of shows to mostly empty rooms, so But you get up and you do it again because it's part of paying the dues, right?
Yeah.
So for me, when I look back, I think about my first few times playing to like big crowds, right? And just thinking, just like, dude, my knees would shake. Like I told you, right back side stage or whatever. I'd be looking out and I'd be like, oh my god, there's so many people out there, and we have to go on in 5 minutes. And all the guys, none of them are nervous, because they're just who they are, right? But for me, I'm like I said, a poet, a writer. And I was just like, oh my God. But again, right, you get out there and the moment that the first note hits, like I said, it all goes away. And for me, there's a thing that, and my guitarist hates this, right? Because he's a perfectionist, but not only that, he's a human metronome, right? So he's always on time, right?
My mama like that.
So I've always told him, I've always quoted, I think it's Beethoven to him, and I've said, hey man, I've said, to play the wrong note, it's irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
To play without passion is inexcusable, right? And he's like, but you also got to do the right note. And I'm like, and so I've always kind of lived by that whole thing of like, no, like if I'm gonna do something wrong, I'm gonna do it spectacularly wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've always kind of embraced that thing of like, if I feel like I'm maybe not, not getting the energy back from the crowd, then I try to give them all of my energy so they know, like, hey, we're in this together, But,
Yeah.
but that's stuff that takes a while to learn, because in the beginning, you have a in my opinion, you have a vision of how it should go, and the moment it doesn't go that way, you start to freak out, right?
Yes.
And that's something I've learned about
The
performing.
freak
It's like,
out.
yeah, is that I've learned to just let go, because because what I've learned from playing to different crowds in different cities, different states, it's like, if they're there, they want to be involved.
Right.
But sometimes it takes the right person saying or doing something from the stage to get them involved. And so, like, something I'll do often is, if there's enough, people in the crowd, like, I go out there with them, like I'll stage dive, and
I've seen your pictures.
Yeah.
You get in it.
So yeah, exactly. Because I want them to know, like, I'm there as much as they're there, and and from the other side of that, as a poet, I try to remember that, same thing. If somebody's going to a poetry show, I have to believe they want to be moved. They want to hear something that's going to make them feel less alone in the world, right? I mean, that's why we all do what we do, right? It's to show somebody else, hey, you're just like me. I'm just like you. We're all weirdos, man. We're all, know. And so I look at it from that perspective as well. Like, I'm constantly just waiting to hear if somebody resonates with, like, a word that a sentence that I said, and that's the, and so my first time doing that at Avant was nerve wracking, because I was like, oh, I don't know if people are going to care at all about what I have to say, and then I've also had it where you feel like you're not really getting the response as you're doing the poem, but then the poem's over and you have all these people come up to you later on,
Oh,
and that's,
my goodness.
and so that's happened to me in both avenues of like the band and also, the poem. So
every crowd's different.
So exactly. So I've just learned to, in the band, we have this saying that we say to each other, and it's like, it doesn't matter if there's 20 people or 200, you're going to play the same way.
Right.
And so from the poetry stance, it's like, it doesn't matter if nobody claps or snaps while you're doing the poem, like, you still have to perform it like it's going to be the last time you ever do it.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and that's the way that I approach it. It's just because I feel like for people like me and you who feel so immensely and intensely, right? Like, that's why we do what we do, is because of the kind of people that we are. Like I said, if people are in the crowd, they're there because some small part of them, if not the whole of them, is that way too. People go to these shows because they want to know they're not alone.
Right.
And I think the thing that I have really come to embrace is that I need to stop worrying about my own insecurity and my own nervousness, because the whole point of all of us being up there is to show somebody else that they're not alone.
It's so hard, though. It's so hard.
Of course. Well, that's
the difficulties of jumping in that water. We know it's gonna be cold when we get in, but as long as you stay in there a little long, man, it'll warm up. And that's the analogy I like to give to people. I was like, man, hey, you just gotta jump in that water.
Yeah. That's exactly it. You just gotta jump. Yeah. Isn't that the answer to, like, most things in life? Like, you just gotta jump.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, a leap of faith.
A leap
right?
of faith.
You gotta take it.
You don't know what's on the other side. Just go for it. Just understand you gotta trust in yourself that things are gonna be comfortable when you get there.
Yeah.
It is. There's so many things that like I took a leap of faith when I went to California and I lived out there for a year.
Yeah.
And oh boy, was it a leap of faith! Like the Hollywood magic is Hollywood magic. Man, that's being out there really showed me. It showed me the ins and outs and the actual lifestyle of what Hollywood and California is.
Yeah.
Like California is beautiful on the outside, but when you get on the inside and you see it, and it's like, oh, you got blemishes, you got wrinkles, you are ugly something. I'm like, all right, I see what's happening here. I thought, it was Marilyn Monroe with the makeup on as I'm watching it on TV.
Right.
But when you get there, you be like, oh, I see you without the makeup, and I didn't expect you to look like this. This is not what I wanted, So like just being out there, it gave me the experience that I needed to see what actual Hollywood was and to see how people are in different areas, because all I know was New Orleans when I first started. I might have gone to like Baton Rouge or La Place or something like that, but that's really on the outskirts. I ain't ever really been to any other place besides coming out here to Texas, and that's still in the South.
Right.
So going out there to being able to see what people are like that's where the poetry really like took off. That's where I was just like, oh, this. Even though the comedy thing is what I want to do, this poetry thing is what's really like I'm good at this, and and it made people open their eyes to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm getting the same feeling that I would with comedy, but doing it with this poetry, and it's always been silly. I've got serious pieces, but I prefer to keep it like that just because it's something that got me noticed more, and so it's like, oh, this feels good, but California I thought I had to go there because it was when growing up being a comic that they say that's the Mecca. It's California or New York. So I'm like, all right, when I get time, I get the money, I saved up, boom, I packed up my house. I'm like, let's get it. Drove all the way, said deuces to all my friends, and I went out and lived. I didn't have to live in my car, but I went out and lived out in California. Like I went and got me a job within the first 2 weeks because I'm an electrician. Yeah. And so that this electrical has really bogged me down ever since after Katrina. Like even though it is nice to have a skill behind me, it makes me reliant on just having to do this because my lifestyle is comfortable at the time, and there's a lot that I have to consider. I can't just give this up because I want to chase this dream. That is long gone now. Now I have to find other alternatives to be able to get to where I'm going, but also not give up the money maker. Right. And that there has because you've chased the dream, you caught that sucker, and then you was like, oh, okay, all right, I'm gonna let it go, and I'm gonna let it go run a little bit, and I'm gonna chase it again when I want to, but right now I'm gonna go back into this field where I'm not gonna be doing music as much. So in my mind, how did you take that? Were you able to because your transition was smooth to where you were just boom pushed over, but how do you feel now?
Honestly, I mean, I feel like I was very blessed to do it. And the thing is, don't get me wrong, I understand what you're saying about you have responsibilities, right? And so you feel like you can't go out and just chase this dream. Well, I had that in a very different sense. So there were, during like I said, I think the whole thing was a blessing because during the times that I was in the band, my mom owned her own business, my stepdad was doing great, but at the end of that, when I was coming down at the end of the band, my mom had lost her business, and my stepdad was actually out of the picture. So I really felt just upon myself that I needed to stand up and help my mom through this tough time. And so I felt the same way. I felt like, okay, I do need to go ahead and be a bit more responsible because I want to be able to provide for this part of my family. And if I'm ever going to have a family of my own, I'm going to need to be able to do that as well. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, that for me, I had that piece about putting this thing aside because like I told you, I felt like it was time for me to kind of move on. But at the same time, I got to tell you, it's different for me than I think for a lot of people because I never really considered myself a musician. I still don't. You know, I joke around with my friends and I go, I'm always the weakest link in all of it, right? Because I can't play an instrument to save my life. I just get to play music with my best friends who they just let me write all the words. You know what I'm saying? And so being on stage with them has always felt like this privilege to me that I just feel like they're gonna let me do this, you know, and we still do it, you know, and because I always thought of myself as a writer is what I mean, not a musician, you know. So the idea of being in a punk band was, or you know, a metalcore band, that made sense to me because I'm like, oh, I can't even sing. I just do screaming. You know what I mean? So it was all those things of like, I just wanted, and it was always like this cathartic, amazing experience. And dude, I've met so many amazing people. I mean, all of my best friends in the world, I've met through this band one way or another. You know, my best friend met his wife because he was in this band, you know? And so,
that's dope.
So exactly. So it's been this amazing thing. And I honestly think that, you know, if we had never played another show again, I would have just been like, hey, it was still an amazing part of my life.
You'd still feel happy.
Exactly. But the fact that we get to do this in whatever fashion we do it, you know, moving forward is incredible. Right.
Yeah.
And so, the way I feel about it too is like, there did come the time. I mean, even within my job, right? Like I've been there for 13 years, and when I first started doing it, I was doing, you know, straight sales and just, you know, always, you know, working nonstop, working, you know, every weekend and things like that as well. But even in that job, eventually I was like, you know, I want to do something a little bit different, and so I've transitioned, you know, into management there, and so that's freed up like my weekends and things like that. Because again, I'm in that same boat of like, okay, well, if I ever want to have family, right?
Yeah.
That I can be around, I'm gonna need to have that time to be around them too, right? So like it's like what I told you earlier. The way that I honestly feel about all these things is there's a season for everything, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very nostalgic. Like I love reminiscing about the past. I love thinking about it. I love in certain ways we get to relive it, right? But I also think that I'm very lucky to be where I am now, where, like I said, I can call up my best friend and say, hey, do we want to play a show? Do we want to do this? And I'm part of that community with, you know, right about now, where I still have that outlet, you know? And I think that I think that's the most important thing. You know, Vonnegut once wrote, and I'm got to paraphrase him here, but he basically wrote about, you got to create art. Like if you feel it inside you, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, it doesn't matter if you don't get famous. It doesn't matter if you don't make money off of it. It doesn't matter if people think it sucks. None of that actually matters. What matters is that if you have a gift inside you, you got to get that out.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that sometimes, you know, and I know that I've been guilty of this too. It's like sometimes we focus so much on like what other people are going to think about it, that it's so nerve-wracking, right? And I got to tell you, I know people have said negative things about our band, but I couldn't think of one of those things right now because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, people who have said to me like, I picked up a guitar because your band played a show in my little town in Georgia, you know, or somebody telling me like, hey, like this lyric that you wrote, like it helped me, you know. And that to me, that's incredible.
I definitely have to think about it that way more often, because I do have more positive thoughts about what I've done compared to the negative that I don't really get much negative, but the negative that I think about is what I've put myself through to say that I haven't gotten to where I wanted to get. And that right there in my head, it almost feels like a missed opportunity, but like you said, things come in seasons. So I'm always just waiting for my season, like an impatient child being punished. And I'm like, I don't know when this is supposed to. I just keep going? I always tell myself, man, don't give up, don't stop, keep going, keep writing, keep doing what you're doing. This is a journey, you know. This is why I do this. This is the guideline of chasing the dream. Tell me a joke. Well, you don't tell any jokes. Comedians hate for you to ask them that anyway. And you know, it's the guideline of chasing the dream, where there's no guideline to this. There's no syllabus saying that, oh, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you're supposed to do it. I went and thought I had a syllabus, and I went out to California and I did not like it. I went out there for a year right before COVID. You know what? I prefer New York better. You know?
There you go.
It's crazy because I was just like, New York it's not what I'm gonna want. You know, I need to be out in the sunshine and that. And I went and visited New York, and I was like, I love the griminess of what's happening here.
There you go.
I like the close knit. It was just so nice. It's really cold. I don't care for the cold, but
I hate the cold.
other than that,
Yeah.
Other than that, I was like, this just feels good. And, you know, I was able to get on some shows out there and actually, like, feel a part of the community. I was like, this is nice. I should have did this in the beginning, but
Right.
you know, there's nobody out here telling me that I got to do this, I got to do that. Like, I took the floaties off once I became an adult. I'm like, man, hey, I can go wherever I want, anywhere
Right.
I want, do what I want. I got this skill behind me that's gonna be able to pay for things.
Right.
Let me go ahead and jump in that water and see how warm it gets. And it was still to this day. It's not going to stop. I'm just going to, you know, now I take my family with me.
Yeah.
Where we're going. So it's like, yeah, hey, this is what Daddy been doing. This is the journey that we're going to be taking. Now we're going to all take it together. And I just recently listened to Busta Rhymes' Blockbuster, his new album.
Okay.
And he has his kids on his album. Like second to last song that's on there.
Yeah.
He's got his actual kids on his album, and he talks about how he used to not really be there for his kids because he was always in the studio chasing this little journey. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I'm glad I have my weekends off and
Right.
you know, time to actually spend with my child, and I still get booked for things sporadically here and there to where people will be like, oh man, let me come and do this, come and do this, come and do this. So it's like, it still is there and it has not stopped. But in my head, just because it's not going as it used to when I was younger,
Yeah.
it feels as if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I'm doing exactly, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and like for what I'm doing, you know, how I'm going about it. Like, this is exactly how it's supposed to go. So I'm like, I just brace yourself. You know, that's how I gotta think. I'm just like, all right, just brace yourself. Things are gonna come how you want them to come. Things are gonna go how you want it to go. Everything happens for a reason. You know, if it wouldn't have happened this way, I don't think I would have any children. I also don't think I'd be married or have a house. I'd probably still be going from apartment to apartment and stuff like that. And so it's like, this is what I've asked for in life. Like, and I have this now.
Right.
And so it feels good. It's like, you this is what you wanted. Like, why you mad that you got it now? And it's like, you know what? I can't be too mad, but it's like, but I want this too. Why can't I get this as well? It's like, you know, the teeter-totter.
Of course. I'm going to say two things to that. Number one, you know, when we're talking about kind of the way that you see or in your mind have envisioned, like, you know, what success might look like. I think one of the best things I've ever heard is a quote that I can't even think who said it. And it's like, success is liking what you do and liking how you do it.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? And that means so many different things for so many different people.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the other thing that you're talking about like feeling like you're not doing enough, I think that's just because you're a creative. I think that's a thing that's inherent in all of us, where we always feel like we're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that you see that across. I mean, for me, you know, I like to read a lot of poets, right? A lot of the old poets, you know, the dead ones, the unhinged ones, you know, like Oscar Wilde, Hemingway, all those, right? But if you look at all of them, none of them ever felt like they were doing enough, and they were more famous than I'm ever going to be. You know what I mean? But that's the thing, is like that's part of it. Yeah, I feel like I honestly believe that's part of it. It's like, I think that you and I could live to be 100, and we could probably reach as many people as we're meant to, and I still feel like we'd feel at the end of that like, oh, we didn't do enough.
We didn't do enough.
But I think that comes with the territory of being somebody who feels like, you know, like this is a part of the purpose of your life, right? Whether it's, you know, music, comedy, poetry, just poetry, like you're like, I'm supposed to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
And that's a thing that for me, I, you know, spent a lot of time thinking and praying about too, because, you know, I spent, you know, however many years in the band doing just this, and then all of a sudden I'm doing something else, and then I get to the band again, and it's one of those things of like, you know what, like I'm learning. I can't say I've learned. I'm learning even at 38 years old to just, like you said, embrace the silence, but also embrace the moment, because I'll tell you this: every show that we've played in 2023, when we've played it, I felt this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. Right? Now, I don't think that means I need to be in this band touring full time again. I just know that in those moments when we're doing the special shows that we're doing, I'm reconnecting with old friends. I'm making new friends. I'm like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be. You know, there's been times I felt that way, you know, at Avant when we're you know, we're all just, doing our poetry, and I've had conversations with people who, feel the same way that I do about something. And I'm like, isn't that the whole point of the human experience, right? Now, it doesn't mean we all drop everything in our lives to just go do that. For some people, it does mean that, But what I'm saying is everybody's journey is different, Yeah. And for example, the journey that you're taking, like, you're married, you're about to be a father. That's the dream, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the dream. And a lot of people don't get to do that. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah,
so,
I feel that.
so I'm just saying, like, I think it's important sometimes to take stock of the fact that, like, I personally don't believe that somebody like me or you is ever going to be like, okay, I've done enough of that. Whatever that, you know what I'm saying? Like, because we're always going to have some other.
It's always going to be there.
Yeah, there's always going to be some new thing that pops in our head. We're like, oh, we got to write that down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, that's so good. All right, man. This has been good. All right, like before I get out of here, usually with new people, I like to play a game of choices.
Okay.
All right, you got 4 options and 4 choices. Okay. You got to be one, raise one, sell one, and then have relations with the other one.
Okay. So be one.
Yes.
Like be them.
Be them.
Okay.
Yes.
The other one.
Raise one.
Raise them.
Raise them.
Like be their dad.
Yes.
Okay.
You got to sell one.
Sell one. That's pretty easy.
Right.
Like
and then you got to have relations with the other one. Like, marry or however you feel.
Okay.
Whatever type of relation you want to have. You don't have to marry that person, but it could just be a sexual type of relation. However you feel about that. Be one, raise one, sell one, relations with the other one.
Okay.
And your options are a mermaid, a mogwai, a Mexican, and a manatee.
Okay. So the relations is definitely going to be the Mexican. Okay. It's going to sell the manatee.
All right.
All right.
Get that out of the way.
What were the
now.
other two? What were the other two?
A mermaid and a mogwai. Yes.
Oh,
and a mermaid
okay.
and a mogwai.
And I've sold and had relations, and one of the other two is be one, and then the last one is raise one.
Yes.
All right. It's tough, man. That's tough. I don't like to eat after midnight anyway, so I'm gonna be the mogwai.
Yeah.
I'm gonna raise a mermaid.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that works. That works perfectly.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own little fingerprint whenever it comes to this right here.
Yeah.
And it's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Some people take it to an extravagant extreme. And then some people are like, oh, I got this immediately. Bow, bow, bow. And it's like, oh, okay. That's a way to think about it.
Yeah.
So, hell yeah, man. Well, Carlos, man, let everybody know where they can find you at.
So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is C_E_Salazar. You can find this band that we've been talking about also on Instagram. It's handle at Before There Was Rosalyn. So before there was, and Rosalyn is spelled ROSALYN.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
A-S. Okay. All right. They got it.
Yeah.
Wow. Why that name? Where
I'm
did that
glad you
come
asked.
from?
So it's a take on the name of Juliet's. No, I got that. Oh my God, you got to edit that part out. It's been so long since I've explained this. In Romeo and Juliet, at the very beginning of the play, Romeo is in love with a woman named Rosalind.
Oh.
And well, I say in love. He's sort of infatuated with, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as he sees Juliet, he just forgets all about her.
Oh,
right?
this
And
has a more deeper meaning.
Yeah.
than me.
So the idea behind it was always more like, what ifs and what could have been, and also about how you can't escape destiny, right? Like, 'cause it didn't matter that he was infatuated with this particular person. He sees his person, and they're short.
Before there was Rosalind, there was no Juliet.
Right. So the whole thing was before there was Juliet, there was Rosalind, right?
Wow. Oh, meaning like before there was Rosalind.
Right.
Oh, like before Juliet.
Before Juliet, there was Rosalind. Yeah.
Come on. Yo, that's so dope. Oh. Well, God, that makes me feel so good that I asked that question.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you did, man. That one goes out to my boy Billy Shakespeare.
Hey, yes. Well, everybody, go follow, go like it up, go do what you do, man. This has been Tell Me a Joke, the guideline and chasing your dream. I have been your host of Maniacal, Menace, Carlos Smith. Say the whole thing like a pimp named Slickback, and keep dreaming, jokers. I got it. I usually don't get that. It's hard for me to get.